Titans fans, it's schedule release week in the NFL, and I'm ranking every single Tennessee Titans opponent in 2024 on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. It's schedule release week, Tennessee Titans fans, and I'm going to rank every single opponent that the Titans face in 2024. We're going to look at the AFC South first, talk about the home opponents, talk about the away opponents as well. And like I said, we're starting with the AFC South, and I'll tell you why the Jacksonville Jaguars are the worst team in the division. Before I get into it, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Again, make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Ton of great content coming your way. Tomorrow, I'm going to do my perfect schedule prediction for the Titans. On Wednesday night, I will be going live at 8 p.m. Eastern when the Titans schedule drops, going game by game. Thursday, I'm going to do my first official record prediction for the Titans, going game by game through the schedule, predicting wins and losses. So much content coming your way this week. Make sure that you don't miss out on any of it. Throw a thumbs up on the video as well if you're watching on YouTube. But with that being said, let's get it. Ranking the AFC South. So for me, the number one spot was the easiest. So I'll rank the teams, and then I'll say where the Titans fit in that ranking. Let me know your rankings down below for the AFC South. But I think at this point in time, it's only fair to have the Houston Texans number one. They have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the division. They have a really good coaching staff. I'm a big fan of Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, and what he can do. While I think the Stephon Diggs move is a tad overrated in terms of the fanfare and the reaction that it got, it's still a solid move for the Texans to stack out their offense. I mean, they're doing what they should do when you have a really good quarterback on a rookie contract. You pay out a ton of assets to stack the rest of your team. So I like what they've done overall this offseason. I think it's a tad overrated what they've done. Their two big moves are bringing in two 30-year-old players. They bring in Azeez Al-Shaair and Denico Autry. Autry's going to be 34, and they paid him $10 million a year. And then they gave the most guaranteed money for any linebacker this free agency to Azeez Al-Shaair after he was a $5 million replacement level player for the Titans. So I think that the offseason is a little overrated. There are still concerns in the secondary for the Texans. I don't think their linebacker group, inside linebacker, is all that great, if I'm honest. And on the interior of the offensive line, there are still questions for the Texans. But again, to be fair, I think they're the number one team in the division. They should be the favorites to win the division. Doesn't mean that they're going to win the division, but at this time, it only seems fair to give the Texans the credit that they deserve based on what they did last year, what they've done this offseason, and have them number one. And if we're taking the Titans out of this completely, I think that the Texans are far and away the best team out of the other three AFC South opponents. Like, I don't even really think it's close. Where it really got challenging for me was who to have next. The Colts or the Jags. Now, you can call me a homer if you want. It goes back and forth. Some weeks people call me a homer. Some weeks people say that I hate the Titans and I like other teams, and nobody can ever make up their mind whether I'm a hater or a homer. I guess that means I'm in the middle, which is where I want to be. But I would have the Titans at number two. I mean, I would have the Titans. I think the Titans are the second best team in the division right now based on what they've done. Now, I know they finished last year, but the Texans finished last in 2022, and then we're first in 2023. And then the Colts were a top 5 pick number 4 overall. And then the Colts were fighting for a playoff spot. So these things flip quickly. Last year at this time, people were saying Jacksonville was going to run the division for a decade, right? Do you remember that? Because I do, So things flip. NFL stands for not for long, not for long. Things change quickly in the NFL. So I absolutely don't think it's insane to say that the Titans, after going 6-11, can turn it around and be the second best team in the division. I don't think that's insane at all. Teams go from worst to first all the time in the NFL. So keep that in your mind at all times when we have these discussions. But for me, the Colts, the Jags, it's a toss-up at that point. But I ultimately went with the Colts. I trust the Colts coaching staff more. I trust the Colts operation more, quite honestly, than what they do in Jacksonville. Jacksonville, to me, is boom or bust. They just get lucky, Most of the time they do terrible things. Sometimes they get a little lucky and they go on a little bit of a run and they do some things and then they come back to earth. It's just the reality of Jacksonville. Look at the Blake Bortles run. Look at what they did in 2022. You know what I mean? They got lucky. They went 9-8. They had a terrible division. The Titans had a ton of injuries. They go in, they play a bad Chargers team. They come back on them with a good win, and then they go into Kansas City and lose. You know what I mean? And then after that, they come back down to earth. So to me, I went with Indianapolis because while Indianapolis doesn't have the boom or bust nature, they're just more consistent, more solid all the time. Indy hasn't had any great teams in a long time, but they haven't had a ton of just absolute stinkers either. I mean, they were bad in 2022, which led to the top 5 pick. But for the most part, the last decade, Indy's been pretty consistent. They're pretty solid. And you got to think that Anthony Richardson is healthier this year. I mean, maybe not with the way that he plays, but they brought back a lot of their better players. They didn't do much outside of that to get better, in my opinion. They haven't gotten a lot better, but they've stayed consistent. They've stayed the same. So to me, Indianapolis is the next team under the Texans in terms of the hardest opponents for the Titans in the AFC South this season. So I would go Houston, and then I would go Indy, and then I would go Jacksonville. Okay? I just do not trust Jacksonville. I don't trust Doug Peterson. I don't trust Trent Baalke, their general manager. They've had a terrible offseason. They tried to get cute with Calvin Ridley, and they lost him. They replaced him with Brian Thomas Jr., who could turn into a great player, all right? But he's a limited route runner right now. And all they have is Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. on the outside, who are just one-trick pony deep threats right now. Who's going to win on the intermediate on the outside? Of course, they have Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram on the inside, tight end and their slot receiver, but they don't have a lot of options on the outside that I like. I didn't want Gabe Davis at all this year in free agency. And Brian Thomas Jr. is good, but he's not as good as Calvin Ridley. So, and then their defense still has questions. They didn't shore up the offensive line, in my opinion. They didn't shore up the defensive line, in my opinion. So they lost some pieces in the secondary that I don't think they did a great job to replace. So I got Jacksonville last in the division right now. And again, I would have the Titans at second place if I was ranking everybody. But in terms of the Titans' opponents in the AFC South, I'm going Houston, Indianapolis, and then Jacksonville. Let me know your guys' ranking down below. I'm going to switch gears, look at the non-division opponents the Titans are going to play in 2024. We're going to talk about the home games. Again, we know who the Titans are going to play and where they're going to play them this year. We just don't know what weeks. So we'll find that out on Wednesday, but breaking down the toughest home games for the Titans right now. Before I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I mean, this is a perfect time to talk about Game Time. With the NFL schedule releasing this week, you're going to be able to get your tickets, and there is no better place to buy them than on Game Time. So, number one, all-in prices. You guys have bought tickets before. You know that the price that they show you is not the price that you're paying when you go to check out. You don't have that problem on Game Time. Also, you get a panoramic view from your seat, so you know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. You can't find that anywhere else. And they have a ton of killer last-minute deals available, too, if you like to be a little more spontaneous. And the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Again, you're not going to find all these features anywhere else. Make sure you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down the Tennessee Titans opponents in 2024 as we get ready for the NFL schedule release. Again, my next episode will be a live breakdown of the Tennessee Titans schedule. It's going to come out on Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be going live immediately at 8 p.m. to go week by week through the Titans schedule with you guys, talk about every single game. And then the next episode coming out on Thursday night on YouTube is going to be my first official Tennessee Titans record prediction. Not my last record prediction, but my first official record prediction where I go week by week through the games and say whether the Titans win, whether the Titans lose. Next week, we're going to have a ton of schedule breakdown as well. I'm going to hit your mailbag questions next week and do a preview of full team OTAs. So much great content coming up in the next 2 weeks here on the show. Get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But looking at the home opponents for the Tennessee Titans, number one, just going to go through the list, and then I'll go through and rank them. The New England Patriots, the New York Jets, the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Cincinnati Bengals. So every year there are two divisions which everybody in the Titans division plays that full division. So this year it's the AFC East. So everyone in the AFC South will play all four teams in the AFC East. And then the NFC North, everyone in the AFC South will play everyone in the NFC North. So, and then what happens is the Titans play the other two AFC divisions, the team that finished in the same place as them. So the Bengals in the AFC North, they finished in fourth place. The Titans finished in fourth place. They'll play them. And then the Chargers in the AFC West is who the Titans will play, but that's one of the away games. But just wanted to kind of break down how the schedule works a little bit for you guys here. But out of those teams, what's the toughest matchup for the Titans? Let me know your rankings down below for the home games. For me, I know that this team finished fourth in their division last year, but I got to say it's the Bengals. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Because if Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals are one of the top four teams in the AFC, in my opinion. I have no doubt about that. They have a lot of talent on defense. They've improved their offensive line. They still have their two dominant wide receivers, and then a healthy Joe Burrow changes the whole equation at the end of the day. That's all that really matters here. So if the Titans face a healthy Joe Burrow, the Bengals are the toughest home game that they'll have all year outside of the division opponents. Of course, we already talked about the AFC South, so this is everybody else. And, outside of just the Bengals being a really good team, when Joe Burrow is healthy, you got to talk about the Brian Callahan connection. You know that Cincinnati is going to go all out to beat Brian Callahan and his new team. That's how competitors work. But you also know that Brian Callahan is going to go all out to beat his former team. So with that in mind, the increased stakes, the environmental factors, a healthy Joe Burrow, a good Bengals roster, the Bengals are the toughest home game the Titans are going to have. And I know people are going to say, the Titans whooped the Bengals 27-3 last year. Okay, I get it. Joe Burrow was not healthy in that game. So, anyways, with that being said, I'm taking the Bengals. But next, I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love is ascending, all right? He looks like a top 10 quarterback potentially this year. They have a young team that's only going to be better from last year. They've added some pieces. They changed their defensive coordinator, which was the biggest. If you go pay attention to Green Bay Packers at all, which my dad is a huge Packers fan, has been since 1966. So I, of course, pay attention to the Packers so I can talk to my dad. Of course, people online say I am a Packers fan. That's hilarious. Look around, but whatever. The Packers are just a good team, and they're getting better, and their quarterback's getting better, and their young wide receivers are going to get better, and they could have a better defense with the DC change. And Matt LaFleur is a good coach. He's just a good coach. So he's going to have his team ready to play and ready to go. I truly do believe that. So I have the Packers as the second hardest game for the Titans at home. Then the New York Jets. Now you may be wondering, the Jets, why would they? Well, the other two teams are the Vikings and the Patriots. So for me, the Jets are absolutely next. And again, it's like Cincinnati. Is Aaron Rodgers healthy? Because if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, that's a tough ball game. They got good weapons on the outside. They improve their offensive line if their offensive line stays healthy. See, the Jets are a team I would rather play late in the season. I would rather play the Jets later because the odds are that they're going to have injuries. They have two 33, 34-year-old offensive tackles. They have Aaron Rodgers. They have Mike Williams at wide receiver. Like, the odds are that they're going to deal with injuries. So I'd rather play the Jets later in the season, like a November or December game. But if they play the Jets early and the Jets are healthy with Rodgers and their offensive tackles and their full complement of weapons, I think the Jets could be a decent team. I don't think they're going to be world beaters by any means, but I think it could be a tough matchup for the Titans there. And then I went with the Vikings. Now, some people may have the Vikings higher on the list, but here's the thing. They have good wide receivers. Titans have great cornerbacks. So the matchup there is pretty good. Then you go to quarterback. I just don't respect J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold. I'm just not worried about them. And at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to how good the quarterback is. And, you know, I just think the Titans have the better quarterback in the game. So they're going to win the game. Like, it's that simple to me. And then finally, the New England Patriots. And I'll peek behind the curtain for you guys. I wrote down blah. They're just not a good team. It's not a good roster. Drake May is a guy who probably needs a little bit of time to be his best self. He's not as pro-ready as maybe Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Like, Drake May needs to clean up his footwork, needs to get acclimated to the NFL. I think the Patriots are going to be god-awful. Like, I think that replacing Bill Belichick with Jerome Mayo is not enough. They kept Elliott Wolf around. Like, the Patriots basically said Bill Belichick was the problem. That's what they did this offseason. They just said, it's Bill Belichick. We're going to hire internal guys at every position. We're going to keep a lot of our players around. We're not going to add a ton. We're just going to draft a new young quarterback who's probably going to sit behind Jacoby Brissett for a while, and we're going to promote internally. And I do not think that was the answer for the Patriots. I think they should have used this opportunity getting rid of Bill Belichick to do a full changeover and do a clean sweep and restart fresh. And they didn't do that. So to me, I have the Patriots at the bottom. When I go into like my must wins and stuff like that, the Patriots is a must win game for the Titans. They cannot lose to the New England Patriots, who they'll have a better quarterback, a better coach, a better roster at home. They cannot lose that game. So anyway, with that being said, it's time to go road tripping, folks. Let's go on the road and talk about the toughest road games for the Tennessee Titans this year. Before we do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, look, guys, it's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. I mean, it's not even just the playoffs. You have MLB season in full swing now. You have PGA getting ready to have the PGA Championship, I do believe, is coming up this week. So there's a lot to get on there, and it's going to be time to place some bets on NFL Week 1 as well, because those lines are going to be available, and you always get tremendous value this early on Week 1, like tremendous value. So make sure that you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the AFC South. Let me know your rankings down below. We talked about the home games. Let me know your rankings down below. Now, we got to talk about these road games. And of course, let me know your rankings down below. If you're listening to the podcast, not watching on YouTube, hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Let me know your rankings as well. But before we dive into the road games, do want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus coverage of every league from our national shows like Locked On NFL, which I'm on Thursdays. Check that out. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right. Another reminder, tomorrow, 8 p.m. or Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Standard Time, I'm going to have a full schedule release. I'm going to predict my perfect schedule for the Titans on tomorrow's show and then go live on Wednesday night when the actual schedule drops to break down every single game. Friday's show, Thursday night, will be my record prediction show, and then we'll have a ton of schedule breakdown at the start of next week as well, flowing into an OTA preview when the veterans and the rookies mix. Football's here, baby. So excited. But with that being said, the away opponents for the Titans, and they have more away games this year because that 17th game, that added game, is an away game. All right, so the Bills, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins. Again, the Titans play the AFC East this year. And then the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. Again, they play the NFC North as a total. And then you have the Chargers, which again was the team that finished fourth place in their division in the AFC. So the Titans play the entire AFC East. And then they play the Bengals, who finished fourth in the North, and the Chargers, who finished fourth in the West. And then they play the Commanders, the Washington Commanders. That is their 17th game. All right, there's always an extra game that the Titans play each year. Last year, I believe it was the Chargers. And then this year it flips to from a home game against the AFC to an away game against the NFC, which it first started with the New Orleans Saints. That was the first 17th game the Titans had. But anyway, Bills, Dolphins, Bears, Lions, Chargers, Commanders. For me, the toughest game here for the Titans is the Lions. The Lions are a well-rounded team. They play with incredible physicality. They have great coaching on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not as high on Aaron Glenn, but we talked about that during the coaching preview. The one thing I will say here is, while they do have a really great offensive line, maybe the best offensive line in the NFL, they have good quarterback play, good running backs. I'm not really that concerned about their pass rush. Aiden Hutchinson is a good player, but outside of Hutch, I just don't think that they have as good of a defensive line as other teams that the Titans will face. And considering, I think the Titans' biggest weakness right now is probably still going to be the offensive line going into next year, with the right side of the offensive line being okay. Really worried about right tackle still. I mean, I'm just really, really worried about right tackle still. And you've got a rookie left tackle too. J.C. Latham could turn into Laramie Tunsil or Trent Williams or whatever. It doesn't mean he's going to be that in year one. So with my biggest concern for the Titans still being the offensive line, I don't know that Detroit has the defensive line to really scare me in that way. So while the Lions are the number one most difficult team, and they're playing on the road in Detroit, they're going to pump in that noise in the dome. I think there's a chance the Titans could win that game, but still, my toughest opponent on the road is the Detroit Lions. Second, I have the Buffalo Bills. I know that Buffalo has kind of taken on some water this all season. They've lost people. They got a lot of places on defense where they're losing established veterans that they've had for a while, but they still have Josh Allen. And they're going to have the better quarterback in the game against the Titans. They're going to be playing at home in Buffalo. If that game's late in the season in the snow, the Titans are going to be more of a speed team this year, in my opinion. I just think that's an incredibly tough matchup. I almost had Buffalo number one. I almost did, but the Lions are just a better, more well-rounded roster. So let me know what you guys think about that ranking right there. Number 3, this is where there's some controversy, I'm sure. Number 3, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. So again, one of the big factors here is the Chargers are going to have the better quarterback in the game. Justin Herbert is better than Will Levis. Maybe Will Levis proves that wrong by the end of the year, but I feel pretty confident that Justin Herbert's a better player than Will Levis. And I think that they're going to have better coaching this year. I like Jim Harbaugh may not be the best coach in the NFL, but I think it's hard to say they're not going to have better coaching this year than last year. And while the Titans are going to be better this year, I think last year the Titans barely beat the Chargers. The Titans were at home. This is going to be on the road across the country. It's always tough to travel across the country. Better coaching, better quarterback, great edges with Nick Bosa, Khalil Mack, and now they signed Bud Dupree, who I was interested in a reunion. They paid like 2 years up to $10 million. I wouldn't have done that though, so whatever. But good edges against the Titans tackles. I went with the Chargers, and I know that may be a little controversial based on the rest of the rankings, but that's where I have it. Next, I have the Chicago Bears. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a good player. I do. And they have a pretty solid offensive line that's underrated, in my opinion. They have talent on defense. Once they added Montez Sweat last year, that defense got a lot better. And look at the weapons they have on offense. I mean, Cole Kmet, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. Like, I know the Titans got good cornerbacks, but boy, that's a lot of weapons. Going into Chicago, if they get off on a good I want to play Chicago early in the season because I don't want them to kind of catch themselves and find their bearings and figure out who they are. Let's play them early. You know what I mean? So I think Chicago is going to be much, much improved. I think they're going to be fighting for a wild card spot pretty late into the year. And my next team is where the controversy really, takes hold. I have the Dolphins. Will Levis owns the Dolphins. Will Levis owns Miami right now. That's my view. And I'm sorry, but I just don't believe in Miami. I think they were a flash in the pan last year. They got hot. They looked sweet. Great offense. I want to play Miami late in the season again because late in the season, they can't hack it. They can't. So I know it's not going to be cold weather in Miami, even late in the season, but I'd still rather play them late in the year because Miami is going to start out hot again. And then as the months drag on, they're going to come back down to earth. And I just don't trust Miami. I don't trust their quarterback, number one, more than anything. I think Tua is one of the most overrated players in the entire NFL. And I'm just praying that the Dolphins give him a big, $250 million contract. Just what a mistake. It would just be absurd, in my opinion. So hopefully they do that. But I'm not scared of Miami. So I have them second to last. And then finally, the Washington Commanders. I don't care that they're playing in Washington. This is a must win. Like I put for the Patriots, blah, for the Commanders. I don't trust Jaden Daniels. I don't trust Cliff Kingsbury. I think Dan Quinn was the worst coaching hire of the entire offseason. I don't like what they've done with their roster. And not only that, but their second round pick, Johnny Newton, dropped in the draft because he had surgery on a Jones fracture in one of his feet. And now we learned over the weekend, he's got a Jones fracture in the other foot as well and has to have surgery. So I've been saying on Locked On NFL all season, it's the disaster in DC. No way the Titans can lose that game. They have to win that game. I think that's easily not only their worst opponent all year or worst opponent on the road, but their worst opponent all year long. So let me know how you guys feel about those rankings, AFC South, home games, road games. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow to go over my perfect ideal schedule for the Tennessee Titans based on these opponents home and away. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.